every single liberal that has supported the idea of Canada continuously funding the war in Ukraine is now going to have to send their firstborn to fight the war. Boots on the ground in Ukraine is what the headlines should be. But no, Canada is actually considering very much, in a recent announcement by Mark Carney earlier today, of putting boots on the ground on the front lines, Canadian troops, because Slava Ukraini, as Justin Trudeau and Mark Carney like to say. There is a lot to take a look at in this video, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I do hope you stick around for the full thing. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. Hey, it's another day. It's Sunday. And if you're watching this, chances are by the time this is posted, I will have gone to church for the second time in 20 some years. My first time going back to church was last weekend, and I shared in a kind of vulnerable post what that experience was. It made me get all like teary-eyed when they were singing the music, which I have no like emotional attachment to, and I was getting all sweaty, and it was crazy. People were saying that, you know, it was the Lord was running through me or something of the sorts. And yeah, well, I'll let you know tomorrow how today's experience goes, because I'm going back and I'm keeping an open mind, and hopefully I just don't get that sweaty. That was a little uncomfortable. But what I did do while I was at church and fighting all these emotions is I was actually like very hard on myself, because I didn't want to cry in public. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but hopefully I can hold back those tears again today. Hopefully I don't even feel that emotional, but we'll see. We'll see. The Lord works in mysterious ways, so I've heard, right? So there's a lot to take a look at in this video, like I said, and I do hope you stick around for the full thing. And since we are talking about the need to protect yourself, at least with, you know, not going to war, I can't help you with that one. If you support the war in Ukraine, you might be going to war. Sorry, but that's just how it is. But if you want to protect yourself online, the best way to do that is through my favorite VPN, which also happens to be today's sponsor. This video is brought to you by today's sponsor, Private Internet Access. If you're fed up with government censorship and the government tracking and then selling your data, well, boy, oh boy, do I have a fix for you. Private Internet Access, my go-to VPN, is the best way to cloak yourself so that you can browse the internet anonymously. Also unlocks a whole bunch of censored news here in Canada, which is the Liberals' quota. In addition to that, when you have Hulu, Netflix, Disney Plus, it allows you to access content that is restricted by this country. So you can use American Netflix, French Netflix, Italian Netflix, whatever it is that you want. There are so many benefits to Private Internet Access, but my favorite is the fact that it works on so many different devices. One subscription protects unlimited amount of devices at the same time. You can also change your IP address to more than 91 countries around the world. If you use my link down below in the description or the pinned comment below, you'll get 83% off Private Internet Access today. Alternatively, you could go to piavpn.com/sunshine to get the exact same discount. Thank you, Private Internet Access, for sponsoring today's video. Without further ado, let's get into this video, because there's so many crazy stories. The first one is actually kind of interesting. There was a judge that made the decision of 2 years minus a day to sentence a foreigner because they didn't want to deport him. And now a BC court has reversed that. So instead of being not as harsh on somebody because their risk of deportation would kick in, BC court says, yeah, no, send them there for a long time because this is not acceptable. So in March of 2024, a middle-aged man was having a cigarette outside of his Surrey, BC social housing complex when he noticed Jae Wong Lee, a 23-year-old Australian-born permanent resident of Canada, was lifting the cover off of another resident's motorcycle. The man approached Lee and asked what he was doing. To which Lee replied, "Mind your own business, old man." Lee pulled out a knife with his 6-inch blade and stabbed the man's arm before chasing him into the building's lobby, where he stabbed him in the abdomen. Of course, that's exactly how one who's a law-abiding citizen would respond to that situation, right? Lee then told the victim to get on your knees and say you're sorry. Oh my goodness. The victim's arm wound needed 18 stitches, and a tear in his stomach required 50 staples to close. And I gotta say, you're lucky to be alive after something like that. So the Crown prosecutors later appealed Lee's sentencing, saying it was demonstrably unfit given the violent and unprovoked nature, because they basically wanted to do 2 years minus a day in order to not deport him. But on Friday, a BC Court of Appeal sided with the Crown in a decision that ruled that Lee's sentencing was too light. It said the lower court judge improperly considered that Lee would be at risk of deportation with no ability to review if he is sentenced to prison. The court appealed, replaced Lee's conditional sentencing order with a 42-month prison term, less time served. The sentence imposed by the judge of a conditional sentence order of 2 years less a day is clearly unreasonable departure from the fundamental principle of proportionality, notwithstanding the collateral immigration consequences. So, in other words, you shouldn't be considering somebody's deportation status when they commit fucked up acts like that. Like, that's insane to just, hey, someone's like questioning something of you. I get it. It's a Karen thing, but to take out a blade and just like a bunch of times. Yeah, no, that's not okay. Get your ass in jail. Like, that's pretty messed up. So kudos on the judicial system kind of doing what's right for once. Isn't that crazy? Oh my goodness. And now we're taking a look at Quebec, because they are, well, making mud sexy, apparently. Scientists search for climate change answers in the Quebec seafloor. Earlier this month, scientists from the UK and University of Laval spent several days on the fjord's bumpy waters, grambling samples from 200 meters below in a quest to track the life in the mud. Dr. Adam Porter, a postdoctoral research fellow at the University of Exeter, said that the sea can look like an impenetrable blue for those on the surface. I think mud is even more impenetrable because you get down to the bottom, you look at the sea floor, it can often look like there's not much going on, he said in an interview. But there's this whole world of life under the mud, and that is playing a really important role in keeping the planet healthy, which, I mean, yeah, there is all these ecosystems down below, and it's interesting that you have researchers kind of looking into that. And I'd love to know where you guys stand on that. I know they lose a lot of people when they start bringing up the whole climate change thing. If they just drop that and like from their vocabulary and just stuck to, good, cool research headlines like, hey, Quebec researchers are looking for what's under the mud, because that's pretty cool. I feel like it'd capture more people, but that's my opinion. Love to know yours. And now we got to talk about Mark Carney's recent announcement. Boots on the ground is what Canada is looking to do. Now, at the start of the video, I made a bit of a funny joke saying, yeah, the Liberals should be sending their firstborn. And yeah, kind of. I still kind of stand by that, because if you are pushing us, actively advocating for Canada and Canadians to be involved in a war that has nothing to do with us, then I think that it shouldn't just be talking the talk. You should be walking the walk. So let's take a look at what is actually going on, because this is a pretty big breaking news headline.
Prime Minister Mark Carney has sprung a surprise at the start of his multi-country tour of Europe. He's in Ukraine today, a stop previously not listed on his itinerary. His visit comes at a key moment in Ukraine's war with Russia as peace efforts sputter, and Moscow claims its forces have taken control of 2 more communities on the eastern front line.
Пані та панове, прем'єр-міністр Канади Марк Карні.
In Kiev, Carney joined a ceremony marking Ukraine's 34th anniversary of independence. He pledged Canada's ongoing commitment to the Ukrainian war effort, unveiling more details of a recently announced military and financial aid package worth $2 billion.
He's wearing a Canadian and Ukrainian pin, but in Canada, he only wears not a Canadian pin, but this honor right here, albeit it is the highest honor a civilian can achieve. He doesn't wear a Canadian pin in Canada, but he wears a Canadian Ukrainian pin in Ukraine, which is, I don't even know the word. Like it's weird. It's bizarre. It's, I don't say treasonous, but it's certainly not patriotic, which is unfortunate because he's our prime minister.
$1 billion. Alongside Ukraine's president and first lady, Carney also laid a wreath in honor of soldiers who have died in the fight against Russia and Russian separatists since 2014. The two leaders also signed agreements. Carney later telling the media conference he isn't ruling out deploying Canadian troops to Ukraine.
We are working through with our allies in the Coalition of the Willing and with Ukraine, the modalities of those security guarantees on the land, in the air, and the sea, and I would not exclude the presence of troops. Yeah.
Let's bring in the CBC's Briar Stewart. She's in Kyiv right now. Briar, great to have you there. Can you break down, from your perspective, the significance of this visit?
Well, it's significant and also highly symbolic. I mean, this is a national holiday in Ukraine. It's when Ukrainians are commemorating their independence. And so to have a world leader, Prime Minister Mark Carney, come here and to participate in a very public ceremony in Sofia Square, it was very unusual. I mean, this is a country that is still under martial law because of the security threats. Large gatherings are supposed to be prohibited. But in that square, and I was down there earlier today, there were hundreds of people, including military officials, their families, and dignitaries from various embassies. Now, they had their speeches that they delivered in the square, and later in the afternoon, they had a press conference, and Prime Minister Carney outlined and gave a little bit more specifics to previous funding that Canada had committed. So back in June at the G7 summit, Canada said it would commit $2 billion to Ukraine. Well, just over half of that is going to go to military supplies, which Ukraine urgently needs now. So things like ammunition, armored vehicles, drones. Canada has also announced that it's going to be having a joint drone production program with Ukrainian companies that will.
I mean, this is what's so freaking bizarre, is the fact that Canada is committing so much money and resources to this war when, again, we have no stake in it. It doesn't affect us. And this breaches our global reputation of being peacekeepers. This is above and beyond. We're literally an arms dealer, and we've left ourselves vulnerable. Now, there isn't any direct or immediate threat that Canada is facing, or even any direct or immediate threat to think that we would be facing in the near future. However, if for some reason shit did hit the fan, Canada is so vulnerable, and I don't understand why our leaders would even put us in that potential, in that position of the potential of being extremely vulnerable. It's very, very bizarre. And Canada committing $2 billion in terms of, dollar figure for equipment and ammo and guns and all that stuff. How many other countries are doing this? Like, does Ukraine have anything of their own? Of course they do. Of course they have their own military and their own stuff, but they're being funded by literally like all of NATO. Dozens and dozens, hundreds of $billions have gone into this war every single year since its inception, right? It's weird how much we are putting into this and how little transparency there actually is on this. And I don't think there's any voting that's even happening for this within our politicians. Like, I've never seen, should we be sending another $1.5 billion, all yays or nays? Like, I've never seen that in Parliament, unless it's happened and I blinked for too long. But it's weird. It's weird that this is not a part of our democracy, and this is just a liberal leadership thing that is happening. And that's a lot of money, man. That's a lot of money and a lot of equipment that we've been giving them.
Involve Canadian manufacturers and Ukrainian companies working together to produce drones. Carney and Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky were asked about the peace talks and the ongoing conversation around security guarantees if there is a ceasefire. Now, the U.S. President Donald Trump has said that he wants there to be some kind of progress within the next 2 weeks. That he wants the leader of Russia and the leader of Ukraine to sit down together. But Russia appears really unwilling at this moment. And when it comes to security guarantees in the event of a ceasefire, Russia had said that it doesn't want any kind of NATO-backed troops on the ground, no troops from Europe. Carney said he wouldn't rule out Canadian Canadian troops taking part, but I did ask him just how likely a ceasefire could be given the responses and the reaction that we're hearing from Russia. Here's some of his answer.
All of this in real time, as you ask your question, is under discussion about the specificities and the modalities. But it's not the choice of Russia how the future sovereignty, independence, liberty of Ukraine is guaranteed.
Trump said no to this, by the way, if I'm not mistaken. Trump just met with Putin like last week or the week prior in Alaska, and they were talking about a trade deal, or they were talking about a peace treaty, a ceasefire, and that's still in the works. And for Canada, which is bordering America, to go and a big ally, to then go behind Trump's back and then just say, you know what, we are going to give you troops on the ground potentially, and we are going to give you more money, and we are going to recognize you as this and that. It's the same thing that Canada did with Palestine. You have Trump and Israel working together to end the war between Israel and Gaza and Hamas and all that stuff. And then you have Mark Carney go out on his own and say, oh, yeah, Canada is soon to recognize Palestine as its own state, which is exactly what Trump said not to do because he's working on bigger picture things. Canada is really carving its way away from America. And it almost seems like a lot of NATO countries are disrespecting America, and specifically President Donald Trump, which I don't particularly like. Now, the elbows up crowd, the chicken dancers, the liberals probably really like this because, I mean, part of Canada's identity, whether you like it or not, is that you know, we are better than America. There's this weird elitist thing going on in Canada, and we're seeing it unfold again right now in front of our eyes. We saw it with Palestine, and we're seeing it with Ukraine. And it's weird that we are not 1-in-1 with America. I don't like that. I would rather be more fluid with America, more, not under their wing, but kind of. We're their little brother, right? And that's not how Carney sees it. That's not how the liberals see it, which kind of freaks me out, if I'm going to be honest.
It's the choice of Ukraine and the decisions of the partners.
Well, Ukraine and its allies, including Canada, are adamant that Russia can't dictate the terms of any truce. This is, of course, a negotiation. And the issue now is that both sides are very, very far apart. Russia seems to be unmoved from its original goals and its original demands. So it is very hard to see at this point just how any kind of settlement could be reached soon.
And Briar, I know you've been out speaking with those most affected by all of this. What are you hearing from Ukrainians?
Well, when I was down at the square first thing this morning, there's that ceremony going on, and just outside of the security perimeter, there was a woman whose relative was being honored because he was killed in Russia's invasion, and she grew very emotional during the ceremony. And I spoke to her briefly. I asked her, what it meant for her to see international support. She said she felt very grateful. Obviously, it was a very moving thing to have her relative honored, but she also talked about just the exhaustion of living through more than 3.5 years of war, the loss that people are dealing with. We know soldiers are being killed every day, and of course civilians as well. And then just the fear that people are living in. In Kyiv here, it has been quite quiet over the last couple of days, but we know this summer that this city, the capital, has experienced some of the largest drone attacks of the war. People who used to hear the air raid alarm and would lie in their bed, go back to sleep, are now heading down to the shelters. The metro stations are full. Parkades in apartment buildings are full because there is a real fear here, just because of how Russia has ramped up the strikes. As I said, it has been quiet here for the last couple of days, but people are just so exhausted of what they've been living through. And as I said, these peace talks really seem to have stalled. There doesn't seem to be a lot of momentum, a lot of diplomatic talk, certainly, but there's really doesn't seem to be a lot of progress to actually securing some kind of truce.
Briar, really appreciate your reporting.
Yeah, I don't think that we're any closer to finding that truce when Canada goes behind America's back like that and says, yeah, you know what, we're just going to start to recognize Palestine as its own state, even though Trump said no. And we're going to start to give more money to Ukraine to keep fighting Russia, even though Trump says that the fighting needs to come to a complete halt. I am very disappointed with our Canadian leadership, to put it lightly. I am just disappointed and disappointed and disappointed. Every day Carney makes an announcement or makes a move, it's literally almost the opposite of what I personally would like to see, just by default, right? Recognizing Palestine as a state. What? Who cares about that? Why are we even getting involved with that? Giving more money to Ukraine and more resources. What the hell are we even doing? If you wanted to have a leader to go and stand in solidarity with Ukraine over there and talk about peacekeeping, and maybe we send some medics or something like that. Yeah, okay. I mean, that's on par with Canada's brand, but tanks, bullets, ammo, and troops for the front line, not medics, not peacekeeping troops for the front line, not even troops to train the Ukrainians, but troops for the front line. That's a little bizarre, man. I don't like the direction that we're heading in. We are starting to really carve our way away from America and be more pro-war, more anti-Russia, but then also simultaneously pro-China, like all these crazy deals that Canada is doing with China. And it's just all very bizarre. And it legitimately makes me a little bit worried for the future of our country, for the future for my kids. What the hell's going on here? I don't like this. I don't like this one bit, but that's my opinion. I could easily sit here and just talk for 10 more minutes about how much I don't like it, but enough from what I think. I would love to hear from you guys. How do you feel about this? Do you support the war in Ukraine or Canada's involvement? Do you support Carney's decision? Let me know where you guys stand on that down below in the comments. And as always, it'd be super awesome for you guys to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you like the video and if you'd like to see more content like this. And just know that supporting the channel's sponsor, like private internet access, is a phenomenal way to help support this channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video. Bye for now.